50 rich customers screaming their heads off. One boat ramp chained shut. 20 news cameras filming the chaos. "You're destroying my business!" Vivian Blackstone shrieks as her upscale diners panic. Boats trapped on the wrong side of my locked gate. Diesel fumes thick in the air. $400 dinner reservation suddenly worthless. But let me back up. Vivian, a Seattle millionaire who moved here, became HOA president at our quiet Montana lake. She built a lavish floating restaurant and used my family's boat ramp for customers, then charged locals $25 just to launch and fish where their grandfathers taught them. The final straw. A 10-year-old kid in tears because his family couldn't pay the fee. What she ignored. My grandfather built that ramp in 1952. It's 100% on my private land. I chained it during peak dinner hour. Her empire crumbled overnight. What would you do if someone hijacked your family legacy for profit? Comment below, share your worst HOA story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about my life before this whole mess started. I'm Garrett Holloway, 58 years old, retired Boeing engineer who thought my biggest worry would be whether to open a little bait shop down by the water. My grandfather bought this 40-acre slice of heaven back in 1952, 300 feet of pristine Montana lakefront where 4 generations of my family learned to fish. The morning mist still rolls off that mirror-still water just like it did when I was 8 years old, watching Grandpa cast his line from the wooden dock he built with his own hands. Coffee steam mixing with that clean pine-scented air, the crunch of frost-covered dock planks underfoot on those early morning setups, loons calling across the water before dawn. Some things never change. Well, some things didn't used to change. My late wife Sarah turned our little piece of paradise into something magical. Every summer for 20 years, she hosted the Memorial Bass Derby. Started small with maybe 15 local families, grew into this beautiful tradition where kids caught their first fish and grandparents shared stories over coolers full of sandwiches. Sarah made sure everyone felt welcome, from the banker's kids to the mechanic's grandchildren. That was her way. After she passed 3 years ago, I kept the tournament going. Our 3 grown kids bring the grandchildren every summer, same as always. Sarah's memory lives on in every cast, every whoop of joy when a kid hooks their first base. I was planning to open Sarah's Bait and Tackle as a tribute, nothing fancy, just a place where families could get gear and hear fishing stories. Here's what matters legally. Grandpa's 1952 deed doesn't just give us the land. It specifically grants lake access in perpetuity for local residents, and includes the only public boat ramp for 8 miles in any direction. The man was smart. He knew this lake would get more popular, wanted to make sure working families could always fish here. That boat ramp sits entirely on our private property. The deed predates any HOA formation by 60 years. Then Vivian Blackstone arrived like a designer-dressed hurricane. 52 years old, moved here from Seattle 18 months ago after her husband's investment banking firm relocated. Everything about her screamed desperate wealth. Tesla that she leased, designer outfits that probably maxed out credit cards, the kind of fake confidence that comes from someone trying too hard to prove they belong in rich circles. She immediately ran for HOA president, promising to modernize our rustic community assets. The woman had been here 6 weeks and was already talking about improvements. First red flag, banned fishing from any HOA-owned shoreline because it was aesthetically incompatible. Second red flag, complained at every meeting about undesirable elements using our premium waterfront, which meant anyone who didn't look like they stepped out of a country club catalog. The scent of her expensive perfume filled our little community center that Tuesday night in March when she announced her grand vision. Clicked open her laptop, projecting images of floating restaurants from fancy lake communities back east. "We're going to build a premier dining destination," she declared, her voice dripping with condescension. "Bring sophistication and economic vitality to our underutilized waterfront. $45 entrees, $15 boat launch fees, valet boat parking, an exclusive dining experience where Sarah used to welcome every family with a smile and a homemade cookie." When I raised my hand to mention the boat ramp was on private property, she cut me off with that practiced smile wealthy people use when dismissing the help. "Sometimes progress requires tough decisions, Garrett. We have legal authority to enhance lake amenities for the betterment of all residents." The meeting ended with her cold stare burning into me. "You can't stop progress, old man." That's when I knew Sarah's legacy was under attack. That's when the gloves came off. Wrong move, Vivian. Dead wrong. Construction started at 5 a.m. on a Monday morning with all the subtlety of a military invasion. Massive semi-trucks rumbling down our quiet lake road, carrying sections of what looked like a small aircraft carrier. The diesel fumes hit you before you even saw the equipment. Thick, choking clouds that replaced 70 years of clean mountain air. Vivian had hired some outfit from Billings that specialized in luxury waterfront installations. These guys set up like they were building the Pentagon. Hydraulic cranes whining from dawn to dusk, concrete mixers grinding, the sharp crack of nail guns echoing across water that used to carry nothing but loon calls. By Wednesday, muddy construction runoff was clouding the crystal-clear water where my grandchildren learned to swim. I filed a polite complaint with the county about noise ordinance violations. Construction before 7 a.m. was supposed to be illegal. Got a call back 2 hours later from some clerk who sounded like she was reading from a script. Mrs. Blackstone has all necessary permits and exemptions. That's when I knew the fix was in. Vivian's political connections ran deeper than I'd thought. The floating platform grew like a cancer on our pristine lake. What made it worse was watching her strategic placement, dead center of the view from my dock where Sarah used to sit with her morning coffee. The woman had studied our property and positioned her monstrosity for maximum psychological impact. Then came the no fishing, private restaurant zone signs. Yellow plastic markers stabbed into the lake bed around the entire construction area, claiming a 100-yard radius of water that had been open to everyone since the lake was formed. But here's where Vivian made her first crucial mistake. See, when you're retired and angry, you've got time to research things. 40 years of engineering taught me that when someone rushes a big project, they usually cut corners. So I spent 3 days at the county courthouse, digging through permit databases and environmental impact studies. What I found made my day. Vivian had never applied for the required commercial waterway permits. I remembered from my Boeing days that any commercial structure affecting natural water bodies needs state environmental approval. Skip this step and you're looking at massive daily fines until compliance. Most people don't realize that environmental violations are legal gold mines for anyone willing to do the homework. The woman was building a restaurant that would dump grease and sewage into our drinking water supply without a single environmental study. Amateur hour. I made one phone call to the state environmental agency's anonymous tip line, mentioned the unpermitted construction, the potential water contamination, and suggested they might want to take a look before the local news picked up the story. Anonymous inspector showed up Thursday morning. Nice lady, very thorough. Spent about 20 minutes looking at Vivian's permits before shutting the whole operation down pending environmental review and compliance verification. The sound of silence when those machines stopped running? Pure music. Even the smell started clearing. Pine replacing diesel, birds returning to sing over the water. Vivian came storming over to my property that afternoon like her hair was on fire. Designer heels clicking on my gravel driveway, face red enough to stop traffic. I was sitting on my porch enjoying the first peaceful moment in a week. "I know you're behind this, you bitter old man," she screamed, waving a cease and desist order like it was a weapon. "This is harassment. I have rights." I took a slow sip of my coffee, still warm, still perfect, and smiled. "Just concerned about our beautiful lake, Vivian. Wouldn't want anything to happen to the water quality." Her perfectly manicured hands were shaking with rage. "You have no idea who you're messing with. This project is happening whether you like it or not." "We'll see about that," I said, staying perfectly calm while she spiraled. She clicked back to her Tesla, slammed the door hard enough to rattle windows, and peeled out, spraying gravel like bullets. Over the next few days, something beautiful happened. Local fishermen started stopping by, quietly thanking me for slowing down the construction. Chuck Morrison, the Vietnam vet who ran our coffee shop, brought me a free breakfast sandwich. "That woman's been nothing but trouble since she got here," he said. "Good to see someone standing up to her." Even some HOA members started asking quiet questions. Betty Sterling, who lived 3 houses down, mentioned that Vivian had never presented detailed financial plans for the restaurant project. "Seems like she's rushing things," Betty said. "Makes you wonder why." But I knew Vivian wasn't done. Women like her don't back down from a fight, especially when money's involved. The environmental review would buy me maybe 2 weeks. I needed to dig deeper, find her real weakness. That night, I started researching Vivian Blackstone's background. What I found would change everything. Those environmental permits that should have taken months somehow got fast-tracked through the system in exactly 72 hours. I've seen government bureaucracy move at the speed of molasses my entire career. So when something gets approved that quickly, somebody made phone calls. Construction resumed Monday morning, but this time Vivian had hired armed private security guards. 2 guys in tactical vests standing around like they were protecting Fort Knox instead of a floating seafood joint. The smell of their cigarette smoke drifted across the water, mixing with diesel fumes and the stench of progress. That's when she went nuclear on me personally. First came the harassment complaint filed with Sheriff Martinez. According to Vivian's sworn statement, I was stalking her construction site, intimidating workers, and threatening violence against her property. Complete fabrication, but now I had a file at the sheriff's department. Then came the emergency HOA meeting she called for Thursday night. Walked into our community center to find her standing behind a podium like she was running for Congress, complete with a PowerPoint presentation about obstructionist behavior and community sabotage. Garrett Holloway has interfered with legally permitted construction, she announced to the 30-odd residents who bothered to show up. His actions have cost this project thousands of dollars in delays and threaten our property values. She actually had the nerve to call for a vote, $500 in fines against me for obstructing community improvements. The motion passed by 2 votes, mostly newcomers who didn't know the history, but her biggest swing was the property claim. Standing there in her designer suit, she declared that my boat ramp had been community property by adverse possession for over 20 years, pure legal gibberish designed to confuse people who didn't know better. The HOA has maintained and improved that access point, she lied smoothly. Mr. Holloway has no right to restrict community use. Something about her confidence bothered me. Why was she so sure about property boundaries she'd never researched? That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what my grandfather had told me as a kid. Always know where your land ends, Garrett. That's the first rule of ownership. At dawn, I grabbed my metal detector and started walking the original property lines, looking for the iron survey stakes Grandpa had driven in 1952. The morning dew soaked through my boots as I searched through decades of fallen pine needles that crunched like cornflakes underfoot. Found the first stake exactly where it should be, then the second. But when I got to the 3rd marker, the one closest to the boat ramp, I discovered something that made my blood boil. Fresh footprints in the soft earth around the stake. Boot prints that didn't match my old work boots or any of the construction crew's heavy gear. Someone wearing expensive hiking boots had been out here recently, digging around my property markers. The disturbed soil was still dark with moisture. This wasn't accidental. Someone had been checking my boundary markers, probably trying to figure out if they could challenge the survey legally. The arrogance was stunning. Not only was she stealing my property, she was doing reconnaissance to cover her tracks. I'd learned something important during my Boeing years. When people make bold claims about property rights, they usually don't know what they're talking about. Real adverse possession requires 20+ years of uncontested continuous use. Since my family had been using and maintaining that ramp the entire time, Vivian's claim was worthless. But now I knew she was actively plotting to steal my land, not just using it. I photographed the footprints and called Martinez Land Surveying that morning. Professional GPS survey confirmed what I already knew. The boat ramp sat 100% on Holloway family property. Jose Martinez shook his head when I showed him the disturbed earth around the stakes. "Somebody's been real interested in your boundaries," he said. "Good thing you called me when you did." Filed a quiet title lawsuit that afternoon, just to make everything official. Posted professional, private property, no trespassing signs at the ramp entrance, complete with legal citations and my contact information. Vivian's response was swift and vicious. She tore down my signs before the ink was dry, claiming I was vandalizing community property. Then came the anonymous calls to Adult Protective Services, suggesting that elderly Mr. Holloway was showing signs of dementia and might be a danger to himself and others. My daughter Emma called that evening, worried and confused. "Dad, someone from social services wants to do a wellness check. They said neighbors are concerned about your mental state." That's when I realized how deep this went. She had people in county government, people in law enforcement, probably people in every department that could make my life miserable. This wasn't just about a restaurant anymore. This was about power. But now I had proof she was actively planning to steal my property. Time to dig deeper into Vivian Blackstone's real motivations. Vivian went full Madison Avenue marketing blitz for her restaurant's grand opening. Full-page newspaper ad with professional photography showing elegant couples dining on what looked like a luxury yacht. Blackstone's Floating Bistro, where culinary excellence meets natural beauty. $45 steaks, $15 cocktails, boat valet service using my family's ramp. The pre-opening party for investors and community leaders was scheduled for the weekend before Labor Day. Regional food critic from Missoula confirmed to attend. Local politicians invited. This wasn't just a restaurant launch, this was Vivian's coronation as the queen of our lake. Then she installed the electronic gate at my ramp entrance. Professional setup with credit card reader, digital display, the whole works. $25 for daily access, $50 for weekly passes. Lake Premium Access, maintained by Blackstone Hospitality Group. The smell of fresh concrete and electronic components mixed with the morning mist as I watched her security team test the system. The soft beeping of the card reader echoed across water that used to carry only natural sounds. I was documenting the installation from my property when I noticed something that made my engineering brain start spinning. The business license posted on her gate listed my home address as the restaurant's primary operational headquarters. Not the floating platform, not some HOA property. My actual street address where 4 generations of Holloways had lived. She'd literally filed paperwork claiming my property as her business base. This wasn't just theft, this was fraud on an industrial scale. That Saturday morning, I watched from my kitchen window as the gate turned away Chuck Morrison's 12-year-old grandson. Kid just wanted to fish where his dad had taught him to cast. Chuck offered to pay the $25 fee, but the electronic system kept rejecting his credit card. "Sorry, no exceptions," the security guard said, not looking sorry at all. The boy's face crumpled. I could hear him asking his grandfather why they couldn't fish anymore, why the nice lake had gates now. The sound of a child's confusion carries further across water than adults realize. That afternoon, Mrs. Petrosky called me crying. She'd driven 40 minutes from town to scatter her late husband's ashes from the dock where they'd had their first date 60 years ago. Vivian's security told her the fee was non-negotiable, even for a memorial service. "I just wanted to say goodbye properly," she whispered. "Henry loved that spot. We got engaged there." I could hear her tears through the phone. This woman had been coming to our lake for 6 decades, and now some Seattle transplant was charging her to mourn her husband. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about my grandfather's stories of building that ramp with his bare hands, making sure everyone in the community could access the water. Sarah's voice echoing in my memory. A lake belongs to everyone who loves it. So I pulled out the original 1952 deed and studied every word by lamplight. Most property documents are dry legal language, but Grandpa had been thorough. He'd included riparian rights extending 50 feet into the lake water, something I'd never fully understood as a kid. Riparian rights. That meant owning the lake bed itself, not just the shoreline. I spent the next morning at the courthouse, cross-referencing GPS coordinates with the original survey. What I discovered made me smile for the first time in weeks. Vivian's floating restaurant platform was anchored partially on lakebed that belonged to my family. She wasn't just using my boat ramp illegally, her entire restaurant was trespassing on my underwater property. My attorney confirmed it that afternoon. "You don't just own the shoreline, Garrett. You own 50 feet of lake bottom. That platform is sitting on your property without permission." Meanwhile, Vivian was celebrating her success. The restaurant's soft opening was packed with local elite, expensive boats arriving hourly. The sound of wine glasses clinking and artificial laughter drifted across water that used to know only the calls of loons and the splash of children swimming. By evening, the smell of grease from the kitchen vents had started replacing the clean scent of pine and lake water with something artificial and cloying. Even the wildlife seemed affected. No deer coming down to drink at dusk, no osprey diving for fish near the platform. I sat on my dock that night watching the restaurant's lights reflect on water where my wife used to count stars. People in clothes worth more than my truck were dining on stolen property, celebrating an empire built on lies and fraud. But I had something Vivian didn't know about. Legal ownership of the ground beneath her feet. Time to show her what happens when you build your dreams on someone else's foundation. 3 a.m. courthouse research sessions become a habit when you're retired and furious. The smell of stale coffee and the blue glow of my laptop screen had become my nightly companions. Most people don't realize that public records are available 24 hours online if you know where to look. After 40 years of engineering problem solving, I'd learned that the most devastating information usually hides in the most boring documents. That's how I found Vivian's financial death warrant. Buried in loan documents filed with the county recorder was something that made my coffee go cold. A $400,000 commercial loan for Blackstone Hospitality Ventures, secured against HOA common property, pool, clubhouse, tennis courts, everything the community had paid for over 20 years, now pledged as collateral for Vivian's personal business venture. The HOA members had never voted on this. Hell, they didn't even know about it. I had to read it 3 times before the magnitude sank in. This woman had essentially mortgaged every neighbor's recreational future for her floating restaurant dream. The audacity was breathtaking, like someone taking out a loan against your house while you slept. Board members have something called fiduciary duty. They're legally required to disclose when they personally benefit from community assets. I'd learned this during Boeing's corporate restructuring years, watching executives get perp-walked for exactly these kinds of schemes. Using common property as loan collateral without member approval isn't just unethical, it's criminal embezzlement. But the numbers were what really made my hands shake. Monthly loan payments of $8,000 starting October 1st. Restaurant needed to gross $25,000 monthly just to break even. Based on current reservation patterns and Montana's brutal weather cycles, Vivian would be lucky to hit $15,000 during peak summer months. Come winter, when lake tourism died completely and ice covered the water for 4 months, she'd be hemorrhaging money faster than a sinking boat. The loan terms got worse from there. Default triggered immediate foreclosure on all pledged assets. If Blackstone's floating bistro failed, the bank could seize the community pool where 3 generations of kids had learned to swim, the clubhouse where we held Sarah's memorial service, the tennis courts where elderly couples stayed active. Vivian had literally gambled the entire community's future on overpriced fish dinners. I kept digging through financial documents, and each page revealed another layer of desperation. Her Seattle investment firm had collapsed 18 months ago, exactly when she'd moved to Montana. Bankruptcy proceedings, creditor lawsuits, unpaid taxes. The designer clothes and Tesla? All leased, all smoke and mirrors. The woman wasn't wealthy. She was running from debts that could destroy her, using our community as her personal ATM. This explained everything: the rush to build, the political connections, the vicious attacks on anyone who questioned her authority. Vivian wasn't playing power games. She was fighting for her financial survival using other people's money and property. The restaurant's insurance policy was the final nail: no coverage for navigation hazards or access disputes. If something happened to customer boat access, her policy wouldn't pay a dime. Her entire business model depended on boat traffic using my private ramp. One simple gate could eliminate her insurance protection and customer base simultaneously. I found myself laughing at 3:30 in the morning, alone in my kitchen. The irony was perfect. Vivian thought she was playing chess, moving political pieces to crush some stubborn old man. What she didn't realize was that she'd built her empire on quicksand. All I had to do was remove one piece of the foundation and watch $400,000 of fraud collapse under its own weight. Time to go nuclear. If 40 years of engineering taught me anything, it's that the best solutions are elegantly simple. Complicated plans fail because they have too many moving parts. What I needed was something foolproof, legal, and absolutely devastating to Vivian's business model. The answer was sitting right in front of me. One gate, one ramp, one legally airtight property boundary. I drove to Billings that Monday, the smell of sagebrush and diesel trucks filling my cab as I headed toward Rocky Mountain Security Solutions. Told the owner, a former Marine named Jake Reeves, that I needed commercial-grade access control for private property protection. "You want something that can't be cut, can't be rammed, and can't be bypassed," he said, showing me a catalog of systems they'd installed for mining companies and ranches. The steel samples felt solid and permanent under my fingers, nothing like the flimsy residential gates most people install. This hydraulic system here runs on solar power with smartphone control, rated for vehicles up to 12,000 pounds. I'd learned from my Boeing days that hydraulic systems are nearly impossible to defeat without heavy equipment. No bolt cutters, no ramming with pickup trucks, no amateur sabotage. The engineering was beautiful. Steel-reinforced concrete bollards sunk 4 feet deep, hydraulic mechanism housed in a tamper-proof steel box, motion-activated cameras with night vision. "How quickly can you install it?" I asked. Jake grinned. "Property owner in a hurry usually means there's a good story. We can have a crew out Friday if you've got permits." Permits were easy. Private property, my own land, nothing commercial about controlling access to my family's ramp. Filed the paperwork Tuesday morning while sipping coffee that tasted better than it had in weeks. The anticipation was making everything sharper, cleaner. Wednesday, I met with my attorney to finalize the legal strategy. Margaret Sterling had recommended him, a property law specialist who'd spent 20 years handling boundary disputes and HOA conflicts. "Your case is rock solid," he confirmed, reviewing the survey documents and loan papers I'd discovered. "Injunction against unauthorized commercial use, cease and desist orders to all restaurant vendors, police authorization for immediate trespass arrests." The timeline was perfect. Gate installation Friday afternoon, legal papers served Monday morning, maximum impact during the restaurant's busy Labor Day weekend. But I needed community support to make this really count. Can't fight City Hall alone, especially when City Hall was apparently in Vivian's pocket. Thursday morning, I bought coffee for 15 concerned citizens at Chuck's shop. The rich aroma of fresh ground beans mixed with the nervous energy of people who'd been pushed too far. I spread out copies of the loan documents and HOA fraud evidence like a general planning a campaign. The room got very quiet as people realized their community assets had been secretly pledged as collateral for Vivian's personal business venture. "She bet our pool on her restaurant?" Betty Sterling asked, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Without asking us? Our kids' swim lessons, our community events, everything," Chuck added, shaking his head. "Also, she could play fancy restaurant owner with other people's money." The irony was almost funny. Vivian thought she was so smart, but she'd made the classic mistake of underestimating small-town networks. Word travels faster than wildfire when people are genuinely angry. I explained the strategy: property rights enforcement, community asset protection, financial fraud exposure. Nothing illegal, nothing violent, just one very strategic gate and some very public paperwork. "What do you need from us?" asked Tom Halverson, whose family had fished the lake for 3 generations. "Witnesses," I said. "When this goes public, I need people willing to talk to media about what our community has lost." Betty volunteered to organize an emergency HOA meeting for the following week, officially calling for Vivian's removal and a financial audit. Chuck offered his coffee shop as unofficial headquarters for media coordination. Tom and his veteran buddies agreed to document every instance of locals being denied lake access. Friday afternoon, Jake's crew arrived with a truck full of steel, concrete, and hydraulic components. The installation took 4 hours. Concrete poured with the sharp smell of lime and aggregate, bollards positioned with surveyor precision, hydraulic mechanisms tested until they operated with mechanical perfection. The gate's smooth operation was almost hypnotic, silent, powerful, absolute. I tested the smartphone app as the sun set over the lake. One touch locked down the only boat ramp for 8 miles. One touch could destroy a $400,000 empire built on fraud and theft. The sound of Vivian's restaurant preparing for its biggest weekend drifted across the water. Staff shouting orders, boat engines warming up, wine glasses clinking during staff training. They had no idea what was coming. Everything was in place. Legal documents ready, community organized, gate operational, time to spring the trap. The gate went live at exactly 5 p.m. on Friday, right as the dinner crowd started arriving for Vivian's pre-Labor Day celebration. I watched from my kitchen window as the first BMW pulled up to what used to be open access and found a very professional steel barrier blocking their path. The confusion was immediate and beautiful. Drivers getting out of expensive cars, the slam of German-engineered doors echoing across the water as people walked around the gate like it might disappear. Phone calls being made, voices getting louder as the reality sank in. Their $100 dinner reservations were suddenly worthless. Vivian arrived 20 minutes later in her Tesla, gravel crunching under her tires as she slammed into park and stormed toward my gate like she could tear it down with designer fury. "Garrett!" she screamed toward my house, her voice cracking with panic. "You can't do this. I have customers. I have a business." I stepped onto my porch, the evening air cool and pine-scented after a day of diesel fumes and construction chaos. Coffee in hand, I waved politely. "Evening, Vivian. Nice gate, isn't it? Professional installation." That's when she completely lost what was left of her composure. The security cameras captured everything. Kicking steel bollards with expensive heels, yanking on hydraulic mechanisms that could stop a truck, trying to climb over barriers in a pencil skirt. The image of Seattle sophistication crumbling into pure desperation was more satisfying than I'd imagined. By Saturday morning, she'd escalated to criminal behavior. Motion sensors triggered at 2:17 a.m., cameras catching Vivian and some guy in a tool belt trying to cut through the gate's power cables. The acrid smell of sparks filled the night air as they discovered that solar systems with battery backup don't care about severed wires. The footage showed her cursing like a sailor when the wire cutters failed to disable anything. Amateur hour meets professional engineering, with predictable results. But her real desperation showed when she started throwing money around like a panicked gambler. Tom Halverson called Saturday afternoon, barely containing his laughter. "You won't believe this, Garrett. That Blackstone woman just offered me $5,000 cash to let her run boat shuttles from my dock. When I said no, she upped it to 10 grand. Someone with legitimate business prospects doesn't throw around that kind of money for temporary Band-Aid solutions. The smell of financial panic was getting stronger than her restaurant's grease traps. Sunday brought the nuclear option, weaponized social services. My doorbell rang at 9 a.m. Two social workers with clipboards and rehearsed concern, responding to multiple anonymous reports about my mental health and capacity for independent living. "We understand you've been behaving erratically regarding property disputes," the younger woman said, consulting notes that obviously came from someone with an agenda. "Neighbors are concerned about your judgment." I invited them in for coffee and a comprehensive tour, organized files, detailed property surveys, engineering reports, legal documents. The smell of fresh ground coffee filled my kitchen as they realized they'd been played by someone desperate enough to abuse elder care services. "Sir, you're clearly competent and well-informed," the older social worker said apologetically. "This appears to be a misuse of our reporting system." Monday brought something that changed everything. Richard Blackstone discovered the HOA loan. Betty Sterling called around noon, excitement crackling through the phone line. "Garrett, Richard just called an emergency HOA board meeting. He had no idea his wife used community property as loan collateral." The neighborhood grapevine was working overtime. According to multiple sources, Richard had threatened immediate divorce proceedings and asset separation if Vivian didn't resolve the financial irregularities within 72 hours. Suddenly, the restaurant wasn't just failing, it was destroying her marriage and exposing her to criminal charges. That afternoon brought Vivian's legal Hail Mary, a frivolous lawsuit claiming malicious interference with legitimate commerce and demanding emergency injunctive relief. Her Seattle attorney filed motions seeking a restraining order against my threatening and unstable behavior. Tuesday's court hearing was beautiful legal theater. Vivian's lawyer presented first. Poor businesswoman harassed by bitter neighbor, legitimate enterprise destroyed by property dispute, urgent need for relief. Then Judge Morrison, no relation to Chuck but equally unimpressed with outsider nonsense, reviewed my documentation. Property surveys, environmental permits, 70 years of family ownership history spread across his bench like evidence in a murder trial. "Mr. Holloway," he said, the courtroom silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights, "you appear to be exercising legitimate rights on land you've owned since 1952, Mrs. Blackstone. Your client appears to have built a commercial enterprise on someone else's property without permission. Case dismissed. Restraining order denied." Vivian's attorney quietly withdrew representation, citing irreconcilable differences regarding legal strategy. The sound of her empire cracking was getting louder every day. With her legal options exhausted and her marriage imploding, Vivian entered full-blown panic mode. The restaurant that was supposed to save her financial future was hemorrhaging money faster than she could count, and Labor Day weekend, her last chance for peak revenue, was slipping away. Wednesday morning brought her most desperate gambit yet, attempting to buy adjacent property for alternate boat access. I watched through binoculars as she met with a real estate agent at the Peterson farm, gesturing wildly toward the shoreline while the agent shook his head repeatedly. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was old Pete Peterson himself, chuckling like he'd just heard the year's best joke. "That crazy woman just offered me $200,000 for 10 acres of swampland," he wheezed. "Told her the land's been in conservation trust for 15 years, can't be sold, can't be developed, can't be touched. She about had a stroke when I explained it." The smell of desperation was now mixed with something sharper, the acrid scent of a plan falling apart in real time. But Vivian wasn't done. Thursday afternoon brought news that she'd tried bribing County Commissioner Williams to declare eminent domain over my property for public waterway access. Williams, who'd known my family for 30 years, called me personally to share the conversation. She offered me $25,000 to fast-track a seizure order, he said, disgust clear in his voice. When I told her that wasn't how government works, she suggested I might reconsider after consulting with mutual friends in the development community. Attempted bribery of a public official, another felony to add to her growing list. Friday brought her physical escalation. Security cameras caught her at 3 a.m. attempting to ram my gate with the restaurant's boat trailer. The hydraulic system held perfectly, designed to stop much larger vehicles than her desperate midnight assault. The sound of metal crushing against engineered steel echoed across the dark water as her trailer's hitch bent beyond repair. But the most satisfying development came Saturday morning. Mass staff walkout. Restaurant employees had been watching their paychecks bounce for 2 weeks. According to Chuck's sources, his nephew worked the kitchen. Vivian had been stalling payroll while desperately trying to secure emergency funding. The final straw came when she asked staff to work Labor Day weekend on credit with promises of payment once revenue improved. The entire kitchen crew, wait staff, and boat valets quit simultaneously, leaving handwritten resignations taped to the restaurant's front door. One particularly creative server had written, "You can't pay us with scenic views and empty promises." Sunday's newspaper delivered the killing blow Vivian never saw coming, a front-page exposé titled HOA President's Secret Financial Dealings Under Investigation. Some enterprising reporter had connected the dots between unpaid taxes, bounced employee checks, and undisclosed community loans. The article included quotes from Betty Sterling about the emergency board meeting, financial documents I'd leaked through my attorney, and photographs of my gate-blocking restaurant access. Most damaging was a sidebar explaining Montana property law and why adverse possession claims require actual legal basis, not wishful thinking. By Monday morning, the lake's usual Labor Day crowds were staying away in droves. Word travels fast in small communities, especially when it involves financial fraud and unpaid workers. The few brave souls who showed up took one look at the empty restaurant, abandoned staff vehicles, and my very professional gate before driving away. That's when Vivian made her final desperate play: social media warfare. She'd hired some bottom-feeding marketing firm to flood local Facebook groups with fake accounts claiming I was an anti-business extremist trying to destroy economic progress. Posts appeared hourly linking me to militia groups, government conspiracy theories, and dangerous anti-development terrorism. The campaign backfired spectacularly. Small-town people know each other too well for astroturfing to work. Within hours, locals were posting screenshots of the fake accounts, tracing IP addresses back to Seattle marketing firms, and sharing stories about Vivian's actual behavior over the past 18 months. My favorite response came from Chuck's wife. "Garrett Holloway has lived here longer than most of us have been alive. Vivian Blackstone has lived here 18 months and thinks she owns the place. You do the math." By Tuesday, the social media attack had transformed into a grassroots celebration of local property rights and community values. The hashtag #TeamGarrett was trending locally, with hundreds of photos showing families fishing where their ancestors had fished, veterans gathering for memorial services, and kids learning to cast where their grandparents had taught their parents. Wednesday brought the final piece of news that sealed Vivian's fate: bank foreclosure proceedings initiated against the restaurant loan. With no revenue, no staff, no customer access, and mounting criminal investigations, her $400,000 gamble was officially over. The only question left was how spectacular her public downfall would be. Thursday's emergency town hall meeting would provide the answer. Thursday evening's city council meeting drew the largest crowd in our town's history. The community center was packed beyond capacity, with people standing in hallways and spilling out into the parking lot. Local news crews had set up equipment, regional newspapers sent reporters, and somebody had even called the state attorney general's office about potential HOA fraud. The air inside was thick with nervous energy and the competing scents of coffee, perfume, and that particular smell of a crowd ready for justice. Vivian arrived fashionably late, flanked by a new attorney, some expensive suit from Helena who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She'd dressed for battle in a power outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, but the cracks were showing. dark circles under her makeup, hands trembling slightly as she arranged papers at the podium. Behind her sat 3 hired protesters holding signs reading "Support local business" and "Stop property extremism." Obvious astroturf that fooled nobody in a room full of people who'd known each other for decades. I entered quietly through the back door, carrying a thick folder of evidence and wearing the same flannel shirt I'd worn to Sarah's memorial service. No need for theater when you have facts. Mayor Davidson called the meeting to order, but before he could read the agenda, Vivian seized control of the microphone like she was leading a corporate coup. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying that practiced confidence of someone accustomed to boardroom battles. "We're here tonight because one man's selfish obsession with the past is destroying our community's economic future." She clicked through a PowerPoint presentation showing architectural renderings, economic impact projections, and carefully selected photos of the restaurant during its brief glory days. Professional quality propaganda designed to make her look like a visionary being crushed by small-town stubbornness. Garrett Holloway has used intimidation, legal harassment, and property manipulation to sabotage a legitimate business that would have brought jobs, tourism revenue, and national recognition to our community, she declared, pointing an accusing finger toward where I sat calmly in the back row. This man claims to represent traditional values, but what he's really representing is the worst kind of NIMBY selfishness that keeps rural communities trapped in economic stagnation. Her attorney stepped forward with a folder full of legal documents, claiming constitutional violations of commerce rights, demanding municipal intervention to force property access, and threatening federal lawsuits against systematic harassment of legitimate business operations. The performance was polished, professional, and completely divorced from reality. When Vivian finished her presentation, Mayor Davidson looked toward me. "Mr. Holloway, would you like to respond to these allegations?" I stood slowly, folder in hand, and walked to the front of the room. The crowd fell silent except for the whir of news cameras and the scratch of reporters' pens. "Thank you, Mayor Davidson," I said, opening my folder and pulling out the first document. "I'd like to start by showing everyone Mrs. Blackstone's $400,000 loan agreement that uses our community pool, clubhouse, and tennis courts as collateral without HOA member approval." I held up the bank documents, and you could hear a pin drop. Betty Sterling gasped audibly from the front row. "This is called embezzlement," I continued, projecting my voice to reach the hallway. "Mrs. Blackstone risked every community asset we've paid for over 20 years to finance her personal business venture." Next came the property surveys, security footage of her attempted gate destruction, evidence of bribery attempts, and documentation of unpaid employee wages. "Here's video of Mrs. Blackstone trying to destroy my property at 3 a.m., I said as the security footage played on the projection screen. The room erupted in murmurs as people watched her attacking the gate with a boat trailer. "And here's County Commissioner Williams' sworn statement about her $25,000 bribery offer." By the time I reached the financial fraud evidence, half the room was standing to get a better view of the documents being passed around. "Mrs. Blackstone didn't build a restaurant," I said, looking directly at her increasingly pale face. "She built a criminal enterprise using other people's property and other people's money." That's when Detective Morrison stepped forward from the back of the room. "Mrs. Blackstone," he announced, his voice carrying clearly over the stunned crowd, "you're under arrest for embezzlement of community funds, attempted bribery of public officials, destruction of private property, and fraud." The handcuffs clicking shut was the only sound in a room of 200 people. As they led her away, I stepped back to the microphone for one final statement. I just wanted to fish in peace. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. The gate came down the next morning. I called Jake's security crew at dawn and had them remove every bolt, every barrier, every reminder of the ugliness that had infected our peaceful community. By noon, families were launching boats again. Kids were casting lines from the dock where their grandfathers had taught them, and the lake felt like home again. The legal aftermath moved quickly once the state attorney general's office got involved. Vivian pleaded guilty to embezzlement and fraud charges, receiving 18 months in state prison plus $50,000 in restitution to the HOA. Her husband filed for divorce within a week, and both their Seattle properties went up for sale to cover mounting legal costs. The restaurant platform was towed away by the bank's asset recovery team on a crisp September morning. Watching it disappear around the lake's far bend felt like seeing a cancer removed from something you love. Our community healed faster than I'd expected. The emergency HOA meeting resulted in Vivian's unanimous removal and Betty Sterling's election as interim president. Betty immediately called for the organization to be dissolved entirely, returning us to the informal neighborhood cooperation that had worked perfectly for 70 years. "We don't need professional management," she said at the final HOA meeting. "We need neighbors who care about each other." Within a month, the Sarah's Memorial Bass Derby was back on the calendar, bigger than ever. 400 participants showed up for the October tournament, including families who'd driven from 3 states after hearing about our community's fight for public access. The entry fees funded a scholarship program in Sarah's name, helping local kids pursue engineering degrees. I kept my promise to honor Sarah's memory by opening Sarah's Bait and Tackle in the old marina building. Nothing fancy, just a place where families could get gear, hear fishing stories, and feel welcome on our lake. The opening day crowd included Chuck Morrison bringing coffee, Betty Sterling with homemade cookies, and Tom Halverson's grandson catching his first base from the dock Sarah had loved. The real victory came 6 months later when we partnered with Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks to establish the lake as an official conservation education area. Monthly lake cleanup days bring the community together, teaching kids about water quality while keeping our paradise pristine for future generations. Local fishing guide businesses are thriving again with restored access, property values have stabilized, and the coffee shop has become unofficial headquarters for the kind of neighborly problem-solving that made small towns special. The best part? We've become a model for other communities facing HOA tyranny and outside money trying to privatize public resources. I speak at property rights conferences now, sharing the simple truth that documentation, patience, and community support can defeat even well-funded corruption. Last week, a developer from California started making noise about luxury condos on the far shore. Guess what? I've been researching property boundaries, environmental requirements, and permit procedures. My neighbors are organizing, documentation is being gathered, and we're ready for round 2 if necessary. Because here's what Vivian Blackstone never understood about small-town Montana. We don't fight because we hate progress. We fight because we love the things that make our communities special. Family traditions, open access, neighbors helping neighbors, and lakes that belong to everyone who loves them. My grandfather would be proud. Sarah's legacy lives on in every family that finds joy on our water. And somewhere in Seattle, a former HOA president is learning that you can't steal someone's heritage and charge them rent for their own memories. The lake is quiet again, the way it should be. Just loons calling across the water, and kids learning to fish where their great-grandfathers once cast their lines.
Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens meet their match. If this story had you cheering or cringing, go ahead and like the video, drop a comment with your reaction, and hit subscribe so you're ready for the next wild HOA tale.